did you have any kind of evidence of who? I think people wanted to know who the hell's going to make the call on players like Marner and Tavares moving forward. Like, is that going to be Craig Berube and Brad, or is that just Brad, or what? Who's making the call on these guys?
I'd say I came away from that feeling as though Brad Treliving's making the final call on those guys. What I guess has to be worked out a little bit here is, this was new, the idea that Craig Berube is kind of in the inner circle now. I mean, he's having dinner last night with Pelly, and, there's not that many coaches league-wide that I can think of that have sort of a direct line to ownership. I mean, obviously coaches around the league know their owners, probably say hi to them in the hallway, see them at certain events. But, Berube and Pelly having dinner, I think it's more than just a sort of a footnote. I think it's telling. And when we asked Pelly about it, he said that he thinks Craig's a tremendous asset to the organization. It's someone he wants to lean on. So, it does seem as though Berube, whether it's formal or not, I'm not certain, like whether he's going to have a contractual sort of I've got to say in things. It does appear certainly that his opinion is now a little bit more in the sphere of decision-making, but, it wasn't exactly worked through today how that all is going to work. And, look, we'll hear from Brad Treliving at some point next week, early next week, I think. And, maybe some more of this will be clarified because, he'll meet with Pelly for his own dinner here over the weekend. And again, I just think everything is still kind of being figured out at the top levels. But, at the end of the day, Keith Pelly made it clear he's not in charge of hockey decisions. He doesn't want to get involved in trades or free agent decisions. So, I mean, that's all on Treliving's plate now, and obviously the people that work with him.
CJ, at what point do you start sniffing around on free agent marketplace? Have you been trying to touch base with agents and stuff? Because obviously, yes, there's 4 teams still playing, but a lot of other GMs and organizations have had their pro scout meetings and their amateur scout meetings heading up to the draft. So I think, the second season, we'll call it after the regular season and playoffs, might be in full swing behind the closed doors.
Yeah, we haven't quite got their noodles in the last few days, though. I've been nibbling at that market, and really where that goes into overdrive, pun intended, is early June. There's that draft combine. There's the draft combine in Buffalo where you have all the agents present. Obviously, all the teams are there. The official business being done is talking to the prospects and getting ready for the draft. But I think that's where the seeds tend to get laid for figuring out the free agency board and what's going to be available. And that's probably where the T word happens the most, tampering. Although, of course, the league does not look kindly upon that. So I don't have a full sense yet exactly kind of who's going where and how the chips are going to fall. But certainly within the next 2 weeks here, I think it starts to take on a little bit more clarity, and you get a feeling of who the players in the marketplace are, who might still yet sign. I mean, for example, it won't surprise you guys. I know you've been talking about it. We expect Tavares will sign an extension in Toronto. Well, I would think that'll be done 2 weeks from now if it's going to happen. So, there's still a few parts, I guess, that are moving in various places. But when you get down to this few teams still playing, the business of the offseason is going to start to kick into full force here come early June.
So to follow on Tavares, do you feel like that deal has been done for weeks and months, and basically what just happened in the playoffs is effectively irrelevant?
I don't know. I don't think certainly the deal is done. There were definitely conversations throughout this season where I think both sides got a sense of where they would want to go with a contract and how that would look. And now I think it's time to figure out the details of what that might look like. But it doesn't mean they'll reach a deal. I mean, just because the Leafs want to keep Tavares and Tavares wants to stay, it's a not an insignificant matter of, what his next deal looks like that would have to be agreed upon before it happens. And by no means do I have an impression that's done. So I suppose there's still a universe where it doesn't, wind up the way that Tavares is hoping it does. And maybe there's an opportunity there for the Leafs to, try to, I don't want to say take advantage of, because that's probably the wrong phrasing, but use the fact that he's so eager to stay to help out what they need here. Because let's face it, you have Austin Matthews signed next year. We're talking about the certainties. the Leafs probably need to acquire 2 centers to play behind him for next year.
Mm-hmm.
Now, maybe Max Domi is the solution. I can't imagine the organization's feeling that way after seeing the way the year played out. Scott Lawton's under contract next year, but he didn't really use him in the role that we thought they might when they traded for him at the deadline. So you got to fill 2 center positions. There's not a lot in free agency. I think keeping Tavares makes a lot of sense, especially if the number's right. And so, it doesn't sound as though the talks have got going there yet, but once they do, we'll find out pretty quickly if the numbers can line up to make that happen.